2 years ago, when I was 34 years old, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
It looks like the rheumatologist is taking a pretty strong stance that it's not autoimmune, but he did diagnose me with fibromyalgia.
If you're new to my channel, my name is Brittany Simon and I'm a content creator here on YouTube. When I was diagnosed, the first thing I did was go to YouTube to see if other content creators or people were documenting their journey. And honestly, I was pretty disappointed with the lack of representation. And so I'm hoping that this video here will be sort of comforting to you on your journey. So if you're newly diagnosed, or if somebody you know is newly diagnosed, or even if you are not newly diagnosed, but you're looking for more resources, I hope this video answers some questions you might have. Leading up to my diagnosis, as many of you guys know, when you're chronically ill, I was given a lot of answers by the doctors. You know, a possibility of lupus, a possibility of autoimmune.
So yeah, it's really good. It's not like I feel stupid for crying because I'm like, oh my God, it's not even cancer. It's just like, I don't know what an autoimmune disease is. Is it bad? Is it good?
The conclusion ended up being from my rheumatologist, fibromyalgia.
I got an official diagnosis, which is really, really exciting. So good news and bad news. The very good news is that the doctors at this point are pretty sure it's not autoimmune. They're going to say no on the autoimmune because as much as we've been testing and though the blood work has come back a little bit in the red, it's not enough for it to be a full diagnosis for autoimmune. So the dermatologist is convinced I'm allergic to sun. So that needs to be further tested, but I can't do it here in America because I'm moving. So I'll figure that out. My primary care doctor was sure it was autoimmune, but now that we've seen the rheumatologist and my ANA and all those things have come back, it looks like the rheumatologist is taking a pretty strong stance that it's not autoimmune, but he did diagnose me with fibromyalgia. So fibro is the bad news because even though it's better than autoimmune, definitely like in terms of struggle, I'm excited that it's not autoimmune. It is officially fibromyalgia, which I guess is just basically like chronic pain. I'm a little confused about the diagnosis, but I also think like it makes sense in a lot of ways. As long as I have an understanding of what's wrong, I can tackle it.
So the first thing I wish I knew was, what is fibromyalgia? What is that thing, that word that I kind of heard growing up, but I never really paid attention to? According to the Mayo Clinic, fibromyalgia is a long-term condition that involves widespread body pain. The pain happens along with fatigue. It can also involve issues with sleep, memory, and mood. Researchers think that fibromyalgia affects the way the brain and spinal cord processes painful and non-painful signals. That increases your overall sensitivity to pain. Symptoms often start after a triggering event. Triggers can include injuries, surgery, infections, or emotional stress. Or the symptoms can build up over time with no single event to trigger them. So if you guys don't know my story, in October of 2021, I got COVID.
Hello. So just want to give you guys a little update. I have been exposed to COVID. It would seem that I have it. I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking about taking a test or just accepting that the person that I was exposed to did test positive, and whatever I'm feeling right now feels like that. As many of you guys know, I was sick last week and I thought it was over. I thought it was like a cold, but it's gotten worse. And now like a few people are sick around me. So we're all just kind of like buckling down and trying to like pass this, but like the aches and the chills are no joke. So I'm faring the best. Like I'm in the best health quote unquote position than the other people in my life. So we're trying to get through it.
And I buckled down. I stayed inside. I had not been vaxxed yet. And so eventually I did get vaxxed, but I got COVID before I was vaxxed. Huge mistake. If I had been vaxxed, I probably wouldn't have had it so hard, but I really believe this was my trigger moment. After I got COVID in October of 2021, it ended up making me sick up until January, really.
Hey guys, just want to let you know that I've been sick and it's really hard to talk. So I am going to skip today's live show, which sucks because I have such a good topic to talk to you about.
And then I noticed I was just declining so heavily. I thought it was just COVID time and time again. And I was wondering, why am I always sick? What's happening? And because I'm a streamer, I was able to document sort of instances of, hey, I can't stream, I'm sick, or hey, I'm not feeling good today, guys, I'm so sorry.
I hope you know it's okay to be sad and grieve. Yes, totally. I know everyone is different, but it's very normal after a diagnosis. I've cried so much. I feel so conflicted about why I'm crying. Why am I crying? Grab your tissues, girls. I might cry. I don't feel sad. But I feel sad. Okay, here it is. I was really angry the other day. I was mad at myself for being sick.
And I feel so lucky that I have those videos because I think it's easy for me to even forget what the process was like. I even found a video of me thinking that it was lupus and the doctor's feeling pretty confident and everyone is feeling pretty confident.
Pretty weird. I think I mostly cried at the doctors because I was so worried about being a mom. But she says that plenty of women still have babies with lupus, and still can manage.
And that was still a year out from an official diagnosis. And so this diagnosis process can take so long because we think, oh, it's just a blood test, or we think it's just an ANA, or we think it's just one doctor visit. But often with chronic health, it can take years. Even women who experience endometriosis, as an example, can take an average of 8 years to get diagnosed. So fibromyalgia is not that different in terms of getting the diagnosis. I'm really lucky that it didn't take more than a couple of years, but I think that was just luck. I think a lot of people it can take a lot longer. So when I explain fibromyalgia to my family and friends, I try to explain to them in the way my rheumatologist did to me that basically my brain is processing pain inaccurately. So even if there's no real pain or a result of the pain, like injury, it feels like I'm being injured. And so it can take my spoons away from me. I'm unable to do basic things like chores or even sometimes work. The brain fog is very intense, where sometimes I will have had enough sleep, but I'll be sitting at my computer and it just feels like I can't think, I can't process a thought. And prior to this diagnosis, I never had issues with my body. I never was chronically ill. I never felt pain like this at this level. I never could even understand my friends and family who are chronically ill themselves. The way they would explain to me their problems, I could never have an embodied experience with it. It was very logical. Like I could very much sympathize, but I couldn't empathize. And now that I'm chronically ill, it really is a disability. It's a disability in a real way that is hard to explain because it's invisible. And because my personality didn't change just because I was chronically ill, sometimes this very like Taurus energy makes people doubt that you're sick.
They said that women who are in my like category of women, like women who run like businesses and stuff like that, we have like unrelenting standards and we are the biggest bullies to ourselves, which is so fucking true, bro. It will be fine. I just feel bad because, a bunch of people want to come see me and they want to make plans. And I legit don't know what my spoons will be like. So, I'm sure I'll be fine in like a month or whenever.
And it can feel very hard. It can just feel very hard and disconnected from your loved ones that they don't always know how to understand that you're sick because you barely understand that you're sick. Like some days are so good for me that I forget that I'm sick. And then I usually overdo it with, projects or chores or something. And then I decline again. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sick. I tell my partner all the time, maybe the diagnosis was wrong. And my partner goes, you're going to feel this in a few days if you overdo it. And then I overdo it. And then I feel pretty bad, So I think it's very human for us to sometimes like just be confused about what this diagnosis is, what it means, how could this thing impact my life so much and it not be tangible or make sense like something like cancer does. Like if somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, we have an image of something being the issue. But with fibromyalgia, because it's so invisible, all you do is get backlash and doubt. The second thing I wish I knew was how other people would react. I think it would have been nice to have been able to explain to my family and loved ones and friends with a little bit more ease what was happening, but I was so blindsided by the diagnosis. I was so blindsided by being sick. I was so ignorant going into seeking a diagnosis that before I was even officially diagnosed, I ended up spending, this is so stupid, like $16,000 on doctor's visits, nutritionists, like all of these things I didn't even need yet, but I was trying to get ahead of it. And I wish I had just been patient and waited and maybe not spent so much money on outside sources helping me and just focused on, a direct me and my doctor relationship. My doctor had told me to work with somebody who could help me with my diet, but I don't think my doctor meant somebody who's going to cost $16,000, right? And the worst part was that, you never know what you're signing up for, but because it felt like I was dying, it felt like I had to do whatever it took to stay alive in a sense. Felt like my fire was going out. It felt like my body was dying on me. And I did have some family and friends that I tried to explain this to, And because they were so worried about me, because they were so scared for me, they ended up doing the very human thing of relying on me to comfort them through my own diagnosis, which was really hard. So I wish I kind of knew ahead of time what it might have been like to be sick and deal with chronic illness. And even though a lot of my audience who's chronically ill reached out and gave me support, which was great, it was interesting trying to communicate that to my family and friends. And I eventually remember sitting down a couple people and saying, I love you. I need you to talk to somebody else about this. They're like, I'm so afraid for you though. And I was like, I know, but I'm already afraid for me and I can't be the one to do this emotional labor for you. I need you to talk to somebody else. And it's fine. They talked to somebody else, but I think there was a misunderstanding from people that after I got my diagnosis that I'd be better and more functional. But the truth is nope, this is forever now. I was underweight. I was so sick. I was so tired, was struggling so badly. I was fighting my own perceptions of what my future could look like.
It says I have an autoimmune issue too. It sucks because it limits how you get to live your life. You'll find your balance, but I've known for a decade and still get resentful of my body. I am pissed at my body. I am upset. I have so many problems and I'm just so annoyed because I had figured out how to balance everything. And then this news came up and I'm like, really, bro? So f***ed up, bro. I have so many problems. I don't need another one. But my mother always says the universe or God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I believe that. I do believe that.
There was a part of it where I was single and I was thinking about adopting and I was thinking about my career and I was thinking about all these things that I was aiming for. And I was facing the reality that I was going to lose them. And then along the journey, I met my now partner and I had told them when I started dating them that I am sick and I don't know what I'm sick with and I'm still seeking a diagnosis. They were with me through the whole process and they were with me through the whole process in a way that I needed, kind of relied heavily on them, and I kind of became really isolated. It was hard for me to socialize. It was hard for me to focus on friendships and things like that. And I was really lucky that a lot of my friends were supportive. I remember my best friend of 27 years now. It was so bad. I called her and I said, hey, I forgot your birthday. And she was like, what? And I was like, I'm so sorry. I have forgotten your birthday. And I was crying and I remember feeling so alone because I couldn't remember my best friend of 27 years, a birthday we celebrate every year. I couldn't remember it. And she was like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's just a birthday. And she was very comforting and lovely, but it was bad. It was so bad that I really thought oh, this is it. And that's, I've accepted death. I can die, but I think it was hard to know if I was going to die or not. It was weird not being able to plan. So the third thing I wish I knew was how it would change my desire to be a mother, to be anything. So when I was getting diagnosed through that process, I was single and then I was partnered. And when I was partnered, I was telling them that, hey, I've lost my connection to motherhood because prior to getting diagnosed, I was like, I'm going to have 6 kids. I'm going to have all these babies. I'm one of 10. I was so excited, right? My partner during the courting, stage of our dating was fully open to having kids or not having kids. So they didn't, they were indifferent to that process. This diagnosis changed me. This diagnosis isn't just a day you get diagnosed. It's years leading up into this thing, this label, right? I was crying constantly, just so depressed over the idea that I'm not going to be a mom, am I?
Today, I wanted to rip off my arms. They just hurt so much. And I don't know. It's fine. If it's like that forever, it makes me think am I not gonna be a mom, bro? Hey, if I don't have to be a mom, I don't have to make more money. So at least that's good. I can go on more vacations, I guess.
And even though a lot of people were like, Brittany, I have chronic illness, I have all these autoimmune, I have these issues, and I'm a mom. I love that. I already had so many things I was juggling and maintaining that another diagnosis and being a mom, I just knew I couldn't do it.
It's just weird when you work towards something for so long and so hard, and then the doctor's like, oh, hey, you know that thing you wanted? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you know that thing you're so close to getting? I'm like, yeah. They're like, I don't know if you get it in this lifetime. I thought healing from my borderline was and by healing, I mean in remission, was going to be peak. I thought I was such a champ. And now my body's like, oh, yeah, that was kind of easy. Honestly, I don't know what's easier, borderline and wanting to kill yourself or a lifelong painful, I don't know. But my body hurts like a bitch, bro.
And I was 34 at the time, and I was pretty sure that I was mourning the loss of motherhood. I could feel that I was heading in a direction of letting go of this version of myself. And now, 2 years later, I'm about to be 36. I'm just like a week away from my birthday. I decided not to have children. And it's not, one thing. It's not like, oh, she got fibromyalgia, so no motherhood. It was more like all of the things and plus. Though I think it's amazing that other people are able to do it, I just don't think it's in the cards for me. And so we've made that decision as a unit. And I think I wish I knew that going in, because it was kind of hard to balance it. I think the problem I had through the whole time is it felt like I was me, but I was battling all these versions of myself. The version of myself that's like, okay, we're going to get a nutritionist and we're going to get on top of this. The version of me that's like, I'm going to be a mom or I'm going to lose that. The version of me that's like, hey, I'm working, but I can't work as much. The version of me that's like, oh my gosh, am I falling in love right now at the same time? I was balancing all of these transformations. I was in a transition. And then what's crazy is number 4, I wish I knew how it would impact my work, because at the time that it had happened, I was on a roll. Like I was becoming a content creator full time, which meant I could be sick at home. That also meant I had to show up every day because like no one was waiting to pay me, right? I had to show up.
How are you feeling? I'm feeling okay. So far I have like all the symptoms with the fever. So the worst part for me, obviously you can tell I'm sick, but the worst part for me is like the aches. I don't love that. The first few days I slept no problem. The last 2 days I could not sleep without like edibles in between, and I'm not smoking right now, obviously. But I think the body aches are the most frustrating part because it just feels like your bones are fragile. When I sit still long enough, I start to feel okay, and I'm like, oh, I can make a video. And then it's like you walk up the stairs and you're just like, you're out for like 2 hours. I don't know if this is accurate, but I don't know what it's like to live with chronic pain, but I assume it's something like this where everything hurts and everything takes way too many spoons.
I was so sick, I couldn't do collabs. I was so sick that anytime I even attempted to try to get back into it, I would just crash and burn. And I was like, where am I going to get this energy from?
So anyways, I know we'll be fine. I'm going to feel like a failure for a while. I don't know how to maintain my podcasts. Ironically enough, I can handle my calls. I'm not taking any new callers. The ones I have are plenty. I can handle my live shows. It doesn't take too many spoons. But when I do my podcast, it like takes all of my energy. So, I'm probably not going to be able to do it for a while.
There was a real fear. Like there really was a real fear that I was about to lose everything I had built. Now, the good thing, I guess I had already been through therapy. I had already built up enough self-awareness that I knew I wasn't going to be crushed under the weight of this. But it also felt like it could. You've been through therapy, you've done the work, and you're thinking, I'm ready for anything life throws at me. Even though I was confident, I was also so scared. I was pretty scared that I was gonna have to start over again. And as somebody who started over again a lot in her life, I was not about to have it. The irony of this whole process is it led me to a diagnosis, which allowed me to recontextualize the game I was playing, or in other words, what to do in my story. So when I sat down with the rheumatologist, my partner is European. They flew from Europe to America to be with me through that diagnosis process. They met my doctors. I was told I have fibromyalgia. That's what they decided on. And I said, okay, what does that mean? He told me that I have one of 2 choices. I could give up and give in to the pain and crumble under the weight of it, or I could do the number one thing they recommend, which is physical activity. And I'm a YouTuber, so physical activity is not exactly a part of my life. I sit at this desk for 10 hours a day. So I had to rework my brain in order to add this into my new life. Like I had to be a person that was physical, but it was a saving grace because my brain, and this leads me into number 5, my brain is very good with instructions. If I know what the problem is, I can tackle it. This diagnosis triggered a new desire for knowing more about myself because my executive dysfunction was at an all-time low. I was like, something else feels wrong. So number 5, I wish I had known I was autistic. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the pod. My name is Brittany Simon. In today's video, we're going to talk about how I got assessed for autism, and I am autistic because so much of the struggle through this diagnosis came from the fact that I'm autistic, but I didn't know. So going back earlier when I worked with that nutritionist,
I can't do weed for 30 days. They want me to cut back on dairy, no red meat for 30 days.
the reason it was such a struggle is she was trying to get me to like change my diet overnight. And the transition was so hard on my brain. I was having autistic meltdowns without realizing it. And I just thought this was the pain from the fibro or the diagnosis. It felt so weird to be so vulnerable. And then to have this person come into my life who's like, hey, I can help you for $1,500 a month. Like, I'm like, $1,500 a month. You know what I mean? Like, that's so much money. But I was like almost so desperate. And so in hindsight, obviously I would have the wisdom not to do that again. But I think it was the idea that she had an autoimmune. And so she was like, it was like this idea that it could work. What I think she didn't sign up for, what I didn't sign up for, was working with an autistic woman that didn't know she was autistic. So the transitions were too hard. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't just eradicate everything from my diet overnight. And because we were on like a plan, you know, I couldn't get to the next step because I was just struggling to understand why I was rejecting. Like, my PDA was very triggered, right? I wish I'd known I was autistic. I wish I had known having a chronic illness or fibromyalgia could end up being like. I had no clue. See, with cancer, I had some clue. With Alzheimer's, I have some clue. I've had family members. So I kind of had an idea. But with fibro, I didn't know anybody with fibro. I didn't understand it. I didn't have any deep understanding of it. You know, even if somebody told me they had fibro over the years, I don't think I really understood it.
I have a friend, and thank God I know them. Like, thank God they're in my life. And they suffer from chronic pain and fatigue and have all these issues. And for years, I've heard them talk about it, and I could process it logically, but I could never process it emotionally until now. And you know what's funny is, like, the decline happened in the last like 3 weeks. Like, I was kind of coasting, you know, for the last couple of years with problems, and I was thinking, oh, no big deal. Like, I got the rash, and I thought allergies. My knees hurt, and my muscles hurt, and I thought, oh, like, I'm old. And then, you know, all these things happened. I was like, I must be working. I must be. So the last 3 weeks, my body just failed me.
All of that could have gone way smoother had I known other things about myself through the process. But because I didn't know those things, I had to learn the hard way. And it was hard. It was very hard. So I became more isolated. I was focusing on my health. And now, going into this next year, or this 2025, I am stable. My pain is at an all-time low. I'm working out. Specifically, I'm doing a lot of yoga. I'm doing these 30-day challenges that help my body. I'm focusing on my mental health, which is stable. My work is going great. My relationship's going great. My health, everything is going great, but it had to get really bad first. And I think we underestimate how bad it had to get. And I think I probably just shielded the internet from a lot of it, though I think I did share enough for a lot of people to understand where I was at. I was going through it. And I knew I would be fine eventually, but it felt like I was in a storm. It felt like I was waiting for this hurricane to pass by. And my partner was great through it. My partner continues to be great through it, because even though I'm in a great place right now, I still feel the pain. It's every day. It's all the time. It's just different because I'm constantly adapting to the changes in my body. So currently in 2025, here's a huge recommendation I have for girlies and theys and thems and boys and girls who have fibro. For me personally, I did experiment with my diet, and it ended up helping a lot. So that nutritionist had a good intuition. I just think we were ill-matched for what, and I was too vulnerable at the moment to engage with like solution building. So now I have eradicated dairy from my diet, and my pain levels have gone way down. I am plant-based. That's really helped. I'm also doing it because I'm anti-factory farming, and it's a pain you can't explain to people, right? So the fact that my default without exercising on this vegan diet is a 2, and my default off a vegan diet, eating dairy, eating meat, is a 4, kind of tells me, and a 4 with exercise tells me, informs me there's an answer here. And then I have implemented exercise into my routine, and it has helped immensely. And I think those 3 things would never have been even possible for Brittany 2 years ago. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't transition into a life where I switched everything I knew just so I wouldn't feel this pain, because I couldn't understand how they were correlated. But now, with where I am now, it just makes so much sense that I feel so much better now that I've implemented the things that everyone said to do. It's just, you know, I think we take for granted that even if you are a go-getter and a Taurus and dominant, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to solution overnight. I'm still a person. I still have feelings. I still need time to adjust. And now that I have this autism diagnosis too, it makes me think, oh, now everything makes so much more sense. But I want to say that if you are newly diagnosed or you have family members who are unsure about this process, I hope my story kind of makes sense to them and helps solidify that this thing is real and it is highly connected to, stay with me here, number 6, I wish I knew that being raised as a girl in under the patriarchy would lead to the probability of an autoimmune and or chronic health issue. And this is the part that's going to be really hard for people to digest, but there is a lot of research being done that 80% of autoimmune are assigned to females at birth, or women, or AFAB people, or femme people who are raised in society to carry the burdens of everyone around them.
To close a loop on something you mentioned earlier, which is women and increased rates of chronic disease. I don't want to leave that open-ended. Could you just explain maybe why you think there may be a relationship there?
Well, if you take something like multiple sclerosis, which I've mentioned a number of times, the gender ratio in the 30s was about 1:1.
Yeah.
So if each man diagnosed, there'd be a woman. The gender ratio now is 3.5 women for every man. Now that tells us a few things immediately. Can't be genetics, because that doesn't change over a short period of time. Can't be the diet or the climate, because that doesn't change more for one gender than the other. What is it? It's stress. Now, if you look at those 4 character traits that I said contributed to the onset of illness, the emotional concern for the needs of others, the suppression of healthy anger, the identification with duty, role, and responsibility, the belief that you're responsible for the people's emotions and you mustn't disappoint anybody. Which gender is acculturated in our society to take on those traits more than the other? Of course, it's women. So women have 80% of autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
80% of autoimmune disease are women. And a big mystery. It's not a mystery. They're acculturated to play a certain role. Their role has always been to absorb the stresses of their families.
And we forget in all the nuances in the way that we raise gender and how these constructs raise us, and how in the back of our heads, we're carrying a lot of emotional burdens, especially me. I'm the oldest sister. I'm the quote second mom. I did a lot of emotional labor during COVID. I'm obviously the older sister people call when they need help. I'm obviously the person that people come to when things are getting rough. And I was taking on all of those burdens, especially during lockdown. There was so much going on, right? And so I think when we look at the data and the research, it all starts to make sense. But I think the data and the research can be really hard for our family and friends and even ourselves to digest and accept, because it is gender focused, but it's not even gender focused. It's not biological. It's not genetic. It's socialized. So if you're raised as a woman under patriarchy, you're more likely to get autoimmune. It's not that you're a woman. It's that you're raised as a woman, because gender is a construct. And I think that we should pay attention to those things. That's why men also get autoimmune. It's why people who are raised men but are given the similar tasks to how women are expected to act can also get autoimmune. It's why even with BPD, which I was diagnosed with in 2018, I believe, even BPD is a girl mental health personality disorder, but boys can have it too. It's just, it gets neglected. Autism is traditionally a boy diagnosis, but girls can get it too, because it's not about your gender. It's about the construct in which we raise people under gender.
There was a study in Sweden that showed that, this is remarkable, that if a woman was depressed prenatally, that increased the risk of a late premature birth, 32 weeks to 36 weeks. If the man was depressed, the father was depressed prenatally, that increased the risk of an even earlier premature birth. Why? Because the woman was absorbing the stress of the man. And so women do that automatically, not biologically necessarily, but because that's the role they've been given in the society. Plus that they have to go out and work now as well to make a living and to make money for the family to survive, or to just to succeed out there in the workforce. And people are more isolated than they ever were. So in Britain, they appointed a minister of loneliness. So greater stress, more isolation. That's why women are getting more autoimmune disease. And during COVID, there was an article in the New York Times about women who took on the emotional stress of their husbands and their children during COVID, and they felt guilty because of the suffering of their men and their children, because it was somehow their job to eliminate or alleviate it. Well, that socially appointed and then automatically assumed role that women have been thrust into has physical implications. That's why women get most autoimmune disease. What if we just recognize this? Yeah. And this big mystery. No mystery. This is a particular dramatic example of the biopsychosocial nature of human beings.
Yeah.
Our biology is inseparable from our psychological functioning and our social relationships.
It's going to take a level of open-mindedness and curiosity about fibromyalgia and chronic illnesses for people to understand like how they happen. So if you have fibro and you are suffering under the weight of your fibro, I really recommend experimenting with your diet, and I really recommend physical activity, because I promise you, those days when I go 3, 4, 5 days without exercising, I am in excruciating pain, just excruciating pain. And now that I'm making, a decision to invest in my health, I see improvements, but that doesn't mean it went away. That doesn't mean I don't feel pain. It doesn't mean that I'm not constantly tired. It doesn't mean that I don't get brain fog, or it doesn't mean any of those things. It's all still there. It's just so much better, but there is no cure. And we can't just, pop pain pills every day. Though I will say sometimes an ibuprofen really does help. It is still temporary. So I think the problem with an invisible illness is that it ends up being something that only you can understand, even if people are sympathetic around you. I could never have understood this until I had it. For me personally, it was a very difficult thing to imagine until I had it myself. And now that I understand it, I'm definitely on the other side. I'm optimistic. I'm happy. I'm, focused on the future. I'm back to work. I'm back to everything that I was doing. It's just limited, but it's still good. So be hopeful, be optimistic. I see a lot of fibromyalgia TikTokers who just talk about how much pain they're in and how awful it is. It is. There's so much hope to be had as well. And I just want to remind you guys of that, okay? With that said, if you have any comments, questions, let me know. This is like personal, but I also hope it helps you. And I hope you know that you're not alone. And I think I just want to remind my audience that you were so important during my whole diagnosis process, and you really did help me. So, keep those optimistic comments coming. Remind yourself that you can keep moving forward, and know that you guys are making a difference by being optimistic on the internet. I need people with chronic health issues to see that there is something good that can come out of this, even if it's not the diagnosis itself. It's just knowing yourself a little bit better. All right, I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.